Let's go ahead and get going. Welcome on behalf of Plano Public Library. We're happy to have you with us today for Protect Yourself Against Fraud. You probably have all heard, but you have been muted to come into this presentation, and we are using the chat box for questions today. If you could please type any questions that you have into the chat. We also have Nova with us today as technical support. So if you're having any issues with your audio or not seeing what you need to see, you're welcome to type that into the chat as well, and Nova will help you. My name is Kristen. I'm welcoming you on behalf of Plano Public Library, and so pleased to have with us today on behalf of the AARP, the American Association of Retired Persons, and we have a volunteer. Her name is Brenda Rainey, and she is a tremendous presenter. I think you're going to enjoy her today. She's got some great information to share with you about how to protect yourself against fraud. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and have Brenda begin. She'll be sharing her screen, and again, you can type any questions into the chat, and we will get to those later in the presentation, and thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone. As my screen, there we go. There we are. It's a pleasure to be here. I generally do this presentation live, so by doing it virtually, I enjoy it. It makes it a little difficult to ask questions, so I do encourage you to use the chat. So as Kristen said, I'm a volunteer with AARP. And why is AARP interested in protecting people or informing people about fraud? The reason is simple. The organization was formed to protect seniors. And believe it or not, we as seniors are more susceptible to fraudulent activities, and the scammers seem to think we have more money. So it makes sense. By the time you reach our age, kids are out the house may be paid for, so you may have a little more discretionary income, but that just means we have to be extremely vigilant at making sure we are aware of what the scammers are after. So I'm going to get started here. So here's our agenda today. We're going to talk about the fraud trends and the behaviors of the scammers, the con artist playbook, cybersecurity, which in the context of today's just about everything is cybersecurity, prevention and resources. What we won't do is cover every single scam that's out there. And frankly, we couldn't if we tried. We could spend weeks, and by the time we got to the end, they would have come up with a new scam. But this will give you an overview and make you aware of how the con artists behave. So let's begin with the trends and behaviors. Most people, and I can't see a show of hands, but most people have had a phone call, maybe a knock on the door, although that's not as much of an issue these days, maybe something in the mail, where something just doesn't sound right. And you know what they say, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So let's talk about the top scams in Texas. Now, I'm going to make this a rhetorical question because in a real world, I would ask you and you would guess. But let's talk through this. First is identity theft. Someone pretends to be you. They steal your information. Imposter scam. Someone pretends to be someone else to earn your trust. And debt collection. Someone calls and says, you owe money that you don't remember. You thought you paid off that Macy's bill. Whatever it is, these people have gotten your information and they're trying to collect additional money from you. Now, you're going to see me look down from time to time. I'm looking at my clock here to make sure I stay on track. So I don't want to get too far along and not have time for your questions. But 14.4 million people have had their identity stolen in 2019. The total fraud associated with that theft is $16.9 billion. And frankly, that's why the scammers do it. It's profitable. If it wasn't profitable, they wouldn't do it. So let's look at identity theft. There are a couple of ways that the scammers steal our identity. The most common way is called phishing, and that's not phishing with a fishing pole. It's called phishing, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. And all it means is they come to you with something that looks credible. You respond and give them the information. And many of you may have already received an email that looks like it came from your bank, or maybe it's a letter that came from a company you've done business with. And it always says something to the effect of, we're updating our records. We want to make sure yours is current. Click here and update your information. And when you do, all that data is going directly to a scammer. Secondly is investment fraud. Now, investment fraud is exactly what it sounds like. People are looking for you to invest. And sometimes it goes through a phishing scam or a telephone call where people call you up and say they've got the investment of a lifetime. Sometimes it's an email. Other times it's a gentleman like this. This guy is an investment broker. He's 58 years old. He's been doing this job for a long time. And he thought he was making a good investment. But the reality is he was taken by a scammer to the tune of $40,000. It's here in the Dallas area. It was oil and gas investments. And unfortunately, Steve was the gentleman's name, thought he was on top of it, and turns out the scammer got away with the money. Other types of investment are things that you see all the time. Gold coin investment. How many times have you seen that? You buy this gold coin, and the scammers that sometimes call you with these investments will say things like, this is something you can save for your grandchildren or your children. And most people think, well, gold's certainly an investment. Gosh, gold's been around since the Egyptians. It'll grow in value, which is what the scammer will tell you. The reality is, when you buy coins from those people, they've marked them up 300 to 500%. So by the time you hang up the phone or walk out the door, you've already lost money. And then there are the investment lunch seminars. Now, I want to be clear. If you get an invitation from Merrill Lynch or Edward Jones or one of those places that say, come have a free dinner on us and we'll talk to you about investments, or sometimes insurance companies do that. Those aren't scammers. And here's the big difference. When you go to those seminars, you are given information, and what does the investment person do? They give you a card, they give you a brochure, they say, go home, think about it. We want you to make the right decision. They may follow up with a phone call. The scammers invite you in. They may give you a free meal, but what they say is, make a decision right now. When I walk out this room, the offer's gone. And the problem with that is, when they walk out that room, they're taking your money with them. So you just need to be aware, because so many people get those kind of invitations, and they get them from all kinds of places. But let's look at someone else. This is Jean. And Jean, look, as you can tell, looks like anybody's grandmother, right? Nice lady, looks like she has a reasonably nice home. Well, Jean got a phone call, and someone said, you've won the Jamaican lottery. Now, Jean didn't think, I've never been to Jamaica. She just thought, oh my gosh, I've won $7.9 million. How do I get the money? And the scammer said, all you have to do is pay taxes. Now, I'm going to pause just a second, because this one I believe goes back to many of us who grew up with that television show called The Millionaire. And the way the guy worked was, he'd knock on your door, someone left you $1 million, but the catch is you could never tell anyone how you got that $1 million. And of course, the TV show went on, and people would spend the money, and they would end up losing the balance of the money because they couldn't keep their mouths shut. So I think Jean is probably one of those people, just like so many of us. I think Hallmark is even running the story where someone inherited a castle and a kingdom. People think it's just human nature. Someone's going to show up and they're going to give you something. And we all know what they say. If it sounds too good to be true, probably isn't true. But in Jean's case, she let this guy scam her out of $30,000. And Jean was a very comfortable retiree, but she didn't have $30,000 to give away. And we'll talk about how he got away with that in a little bit. Other scams that you get, either online or offline, are tech support. I'm sure many of you have received a call from Microsoft. Well, I used to work for a tech company, and I actually used to work with Microsoft. I never worked for Microsoft. But when they call, and sometimes because of what I do, I just like to have fun. You know, oh, really? I've worked with Microsoft people so many times. Where do you sit? And usually they'll hang up. But they start off with something like, we see you have a problem with your computer. Well, anybody who has a computer knows you have a computer issue. Microsoft cannot see that you have a problem with your computer. Microsoft is not a network company. They are a software company. So the only thing you can do is access their network when you want to download, but they're not networked to your computer. So what do they say? We see you have an issue, we can fix it for $99. And the reality is, you give them access to your computer so they can work on it and put this software on it that will fix that issue. And if you're lucky, you're just out $99. If you're not, they've put malware on your computer. And what that can do is allow them to see everything you're doing. So when you go to your online banking or you do the online bill payment, guess what? They're getting that information to steal your identity. And then the third kind of fraud often is charity or disaster fraud. I have this belief that the people after a disaster, the first people who show up are the FEMA representatives. The second people, even before the Red Cross, are the scammers. And these are the people who show up after the tornado who say, I can fix your porch, I can fix your roof, I can do all the things that you need done after a disaster. And most people are in a heightened emotional state, and they don't make the same kinds of decisions they would make had it not been a disaster. And then there are the travel scams. Travel scams are those where you get an invitation in the mail. You don't get many phone calls, but you usually get an invitation in the mail. And you're invited to a location. And they ask you to join this travel club, which will give you access to all these great deals on trips. Well, the reality is you have to pay to be in the club, and you still have to pay to be on the trip. In today's world, where we all have access to computers and all kinds of discount sites or a good travel agent, you could do this on your own. You're just out the initiation fee of $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to join this travel club. Risk factors. In this day and age, we all have access to online banking. But I will tell you, even before online banking, you had telephone access. And what that means is you need to monitor your credit cards and your online banking. You can go in, credit unions have to, by law, give you a credit report once a year. But what happens is people don't monitor the credit card. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, you may see a charge, because we've all seen the news articles where someone's data was compromised, and now all of our personal information is out in the cybersphere. So what happens is people buy that information on the black market and use it to steal your identity. They can do it, how we said before, phishing, online purchases, or employment scams. I've lived in this area, and I'm in the Dallas metropolitan area. I actually am in Louisville. I can remember a neighbor went out of town and sent a note, said, could we watch the house? Well, I noticed one day there were a lot of boxes on her front porch, and I knew her son was coming over, and sure enough, her son came over. I think I probably called and said, hey, your parents have got these boxes out here. So the son was coming over. He took all the boxes and put them in the house. Well, after they got back, lo and behold, they had never ordered that stuff. Someone had gotten a hold of their information, ordered it to their address, and had planned on coming by and picking it up. But what happened? The son put it in the house before they could get there. It happens. And then there are employment scams. And employment scams, to me, are the most egregious type of scam, because certainly in this context of a pandemic, people need jobs. And if you're looking for work, maybe you're at home with small children and you're looking for something that's convenient. And there was an instance of a young lady who was home with small children. She saw a job ad that said flexible hours. And it said, you select the hours that you want to work, you work from home. Her husband had just lost his job, and she thought this would be perfect. So she applies. She gets an interview, and she gets the job. Well, the first thing they said was they were a company that did payroll checks or printed checks for other companies. Their clients were small businesses. Okay, that seems reasonable. And they wanted her, they would deliver her a file, and she was to print the checks. And she says, okay. Well, they said, you have to go buy a certain kind of paper. Her question was, why would I buy paper if I'm working for you? You buy the paper. No. You expense it, we pay you back, etc. So she gets her first order. They send her the data. She starts printing the checks. But as she's looking at these checks, she's thinking, this just doesn't sound right. Why would this company outsource this? It just didn't make sense to her, which was good. She followed her instinct, because she called the company, and it turns out that they had never hired these people. These people were essentially printing checks with that company's name on them. And the sad part is, had she not been aware, she would have been an accessory to a crime. They were stealing money, and she was helping. So these people, you'll see the ads from time to time, flexible hours, work from home. A lot of people are working from home, but they're doing it legitimately. I was one of them for years. And then we have public Wi-Fi scams. Public Wi-Fi is exactly what it says, public. Sometimes, depending on the phone you have, if you go to Wi-Fi and you're away from your own private router, you'll get a pop-up that says, this is public Wi-Fi. People may see what you're doing. And the reason they say that is because hackers are out there. Someone can create what they call man in the middle, and it's type of router. So they hijack your signal from a public Wi-Fi, route it to their own computer, and they're watching and mimicking everything you do. They alter your communication. They can get your, let's say you go into your bank statement, let's say even your email. I'm sure some of you may have had that crazy email from a friend or a coworker that says, hey, took the family to New York, got out of the cab, and in our haste, I left my purse in the car, all of our money, cell phone, everything. I'm writing this email to you because I know your email address by heart. I've seen it. I've had it happen to other people. Fortunately, it's never happened to me. But what happened was someone hacked into their email, and they're reaching out to all of their contacts in their email looking for money. Most people, I haven't seen that in a couple of years. I think people are getting smart. Most people just pick up the phone and call, Sally, are you in New York? No, I'm sitting at my kitchen table. So be aware that that man in the middle is out there and can be dangerous. And then there's the evil twin. The evil twin mimics Wi-Fi. And what happens is, let's say I have a coffee shop. So it's the Brenda Rainey Coffee Shop, and you come in and you get free Wi-Fi. Well, when you walk in and you sit down and you log on, you may see Brenda's Wi-Fi, not Brenda's coffee shop Wi-Fi. And that's because they've created an evil twin. So they have their own Wi-Fi. They make it look like the coffee shop Wi-Fi, and most people wouldn't think, I'm in the coffee shop, it says Brenda's, why would I question it? And again, they can see everything you're doing. So let's move on to a different risk factor here. Passwords. I wish I could get a show of hands of how many people have changed their passwords recently. I know I worked for a tech company and we had to change our passwords every 6 weeks. I've been retired a few years, it may be every 3 weeks by now. But if you look at this were the results of a survey. They asked 100 people, how many times have you changed your password? Some people just flat out refused to do it. But 50% had not changed their password in the last 3 months. About 3 to 6 months ago, 18%. Some people had not changed their password in almost 2 years, more than 2 years ago, about 2%. The reality is passwords can be hacked, and we need to change them. It keeps the bad guys on their toes. And in making passwords, you need to make them secure. Most websites now have evolved. And when you put in a password, often you will see a little gauge that says, that's kind of weak, or that's better, or that's a secure password. But you'd be surprised at how many people use the word password, Password, as their password. I can remember taking a training class, and I'm sure this was years and years ago, but they were trying to impress upon us the importance of changing our password. And there was an online training tool, and there was a picture that came up just like a PowerPoint presentation, almost similar to this, and it said, can you guess this woman's password? And it was a picture of a woman whose office cubicle. She had pictures of her children. There were things that would be in anyone's office, notes on the bulletin board to remind her of things. I guessed her password in 8 seconds. I am not an IT person. I have no computer ability other than the normal average ability that people have when you work on them. But I'm not a person who can go behind the scenes and write programs. But I guessed it in 8 seconds. And the reason was she used things that were readily available for people to see. Children's names, children's birthdays, all those kind of things. And when you look at that, be surprised at how many people do that every single day. And I'm going to move to the next slide, which is talking about not protecting your computers. Most computers come with software on the computer when you buy it. You have to subscribe. A lot of times it may be 6 months free. But the reality is you need to protect your computer. It can be Norton, it can be McAfee, it can be whatever you choose, but it does need to be on your computer and you need to subscribe to get the updates. I do not work for any of those companies, so I have no loyalty to them. But I will tell you, by keeping your computer subscription updated, you get the latest protection from hackers because they're working 24/7 to get into your computer. The least we can do is work 24/7 to keep them out. But before I move on, I'm going to move to the con artist playbook. So how do the con artists get to us? What do they do that make us believe them? Strangers on the phone, people you meet, why do we believe them? Well, AARP created this program and they didn't want to use the hypothetical. They wanted facts. So what did? They talked to con artists. Much of the information that you're seeing here and will continue to see comes from tapes they listen to, from investigators, police report, police tapes, interviews with the con artist, and they sort of put together a profile, if you will, and you'll hear that word again, of what the con does to keep us thinking, or keep us from thinking and guessing what he or she is up to. So these are four of the con artists they talk to. One, Rocky Smith, and I'm going to look down and read this because they have biographies that just are fascinating to me. But Rocky Smith worked as a consultant, and he trained con artists, if you can believe that, and trained them in boiler rooms. Now, a boiler room is not the cranky place where the furnace is. It's a place where it's just a room full of desks and telephones. Sometimes if you get a phone call from a con artist, you can hear them talking in the background. So this guy worked from boiler rooms for 10 years. That was his career. Then we have Jeremy Shipman, and Jeremy was the gold coin scam artist. He was the person who called and asked people to invest in gold coins. And then we have Stephen Michaels. He owned several boiler rooms over a career of 20 years. That man got up every day, looked in the mirror, and said, I am going to steal somebody's money today. And then we have Jimmy Edwards. He was kind of the star of the scammers because he worked in 30 boiler rooms for over 8-year period. So what did they say? Well, the first thing they said is they wanted to get people in a heightened emotional state, into the ether. And the best way of describing the ether is when you first fall in love, you see no wrong in that person. Or if you lose a loved one, how many times have people said, don't sell the house, don't make decisions right now after you've lost a spouse or maybe even a child, just sit and think through what you want to do next. Why? We're in a heightened emotional state. We're not thinking logically. And that's exactly where the scammer wants us to stay. So what kind of tactics do they use? They're going to use several of them. They use phantom riches, things that we think are there but really don't exist. Profiling, scarcity, source credibility, and fear and intimidation. And we're going to look at each of these. So let's talk about phantom riches. Remember that guy, the millionaire who showed up at your door? Well, that's what this is, phantom riches. I have a check for you that I've been holding for a year. Oh my gosh, I'm glad I found you. Or if we all join this club and enter the lottery, all these tickets, we're bound to win something. Phantom riches. We think we're going to get something for nothing. And unfortunately, we all know, at least at this point, you have to earn what you get. And profiling. Certainly that's a term we hear a lot. But what a scammer is doing, and I always say they're just quick on the key. Sometimes they read the obituary. Think about what's in an obituary. I don't know if the Dallas Morning News does it. I haven't looked lately. But some newspapers even put what the person passed away from. But a lot of times, what does it say? Mr. Smith left behind his loving wife, Sally, his 4 children, Mary, Robert, James, and Richard. So they have a profile when they call you. So what happens? They call and they offer sentiment, they offer their condolences, and they offer you something to help you get over it. It might be an investment opportunity to help ease your pain. All that money sitting in the bank account, we can invest it for you. You're young. You've got another 30 years to look out for. Or we can invest it and help you finance your grandchildren's college education. Because remember, they come after the grandparents or the elderly first. I shouldn't say elderly, seniors. But they gather information so they can make a decision or help you make a decision that's in their best interest. And then scarcity. And remember, one of the con artists said he sold gold coins. Well, his line was, I'm going to read this. Now, John, back in 1860, from the Philadelphia Mint, there were 22,000 of these coins minted. Of those 22,000, only 4 exist. I can get those for you. I have access to those 4. Think of this investment 10 years down the road. What do you think? Scarcity. It's an inborn instinct for us to hoard things. Remember the pandemic and everybody started hoarding toilet paper? Well, everybody thought it was going to be scarce. Same with this. They used that instinct to hoard, and they use that. It's scarce. You better get it now. And people do. And then we have source credibility. This is an odd slide to me, the credibility, the statement that's up there, but we've all met people who say, I have a degree in this, or I'm licensed to do this. I can offer you expert advice on that. And the reason is they all want to give us some kind of assurance that they know what they're talking about and that we can trust them. And trust is the key. That's how the con artists get us. They show up, they look credible, and we believe them. There's a TV show on, I think it's CNBC, called American Greed. And if you've ever watched that show, well, first of all, there's enough crime of that magnitude that they can make a show on it. But whenever you watch it, there are people who go through churches, for example, as investors, or there are people who prey on certain, on their own community of friends and networks. And it's because people trust them. You know, maybe a business. I can remember one of them was here in Texas, was a small business. And the CEO said they trusted their controller, or their CFO, their chief financial officer. You know, this was a small town, a small business. Everybody knew the friends, everybody knew the relatives. You know, these are the kind when you walk in one day to work, people say, how's your husband or how's your wife doing? And this was one of the people they trusted, but they hired a new controller. And she began to notice checks coming from a different bank. And it turns out that that trusted individual, that CFO, had been taking money from that company for 10, 15 years. And the CEO said it took them a while to recover, not only emotionally, because they had been let down from the person they trusted, person who they had over for Christmas dinner, but also financially, because this guy had bought large homes and boats and cars and all the trappings of pseudo success because he had access. And he was a con artist. He walked around and looked like he was a nice neighbor, but he was a con artist. And then we have fear and intimidation. Remember Jean? The reason that con artist got so much money from her was because he called her incessantly. He left messages. Pick up this phone. If you don't get me that money, I will come and burn your house down. Now, we all saw Jean. Does she look like she could fight off someone who came to her house to harm her? Probably not. And that is very, very scary. The other part of this is often people live alone. Jean still had a husband, but in many cases, people are living alone. I spent a lot of time in the telephone industry, and back in the days where you had telephone operators, and anybody who was a telephone operator who worked late at night will tell you they had regulars. These were just lonely people who called just to talk. The con artist plays on that. Sometimes they're just lonely people who want to talk. If you have a friend group, you know, in this pandemic, I've seen a lot of therapists say, reach out, talk to people who live alone. Because it makes you vulnerable, makes you susceptible to somebody pretending to be your friend, and they really are not. So, before we go any further, I want to bring up a couple of things that are happening now. And those are the coronavirus scams. I'm sure you've probably seen them. They pop up on your phone sometimes. But people who are saying things like, be the first on the list for the coronavirus, or I have a cure for the coronavirus, or anything associated with what's in the news, because as we said, trends and behavior, con artists stay current. They know what the hot buttons are. And please do not believe just because it's on social media or on Facebook, it's real. There are people who know how to purchase ads that are for fake products all over the internet. So you do have to be mindful. And we're going to talk about what we need to do right now in terms of prevention strategies. Well, here's what we know. The con artists all agree that they get their victims excited, or the victim gets excited easily. Oh my God, I've won that money. So they don't consider why it's a scam. They don't ask questions other than, what do I need to do to get the money? Or how do I get the first coronavirus? How do I get be the first person on the list for the virus? Or they don't read enough information. I'm a reader. I check just about everything, 3 or 4 sources, because the more you read, the more information you find out. But what do you do? Well, some of it you think, well, you never make a buying decision in a heightened emotional state. And that seems pretty easy to do, and it seems pretty logical. But the reality is, when you're in that heightened emotional state, you don't necessarily know it. You're thinking you're normal. It's your friends who tell you, oh, I'm sorry, Brenda, you're not thinking right now. Why don't you pause a bit before you make that decision? Ask more questions than you answer. And the reason is that con artist is profiling you. Read about the product before buying. Well, in today's world with everything on the internet, you can read all kinds of product reviews. Be careful where you read them. I have seen this where a person or a company has a product and they write their own reviews. What they do is create a blog, and then they write wonderful things about the product. You're reading it and you're thinking, oh, this is good. I want to buy that product. That's why, if you notice, a lot of the websites now say verified reviewer or verified purchaser, is because they're trying to weed out the scammers. The people who put reviews in there, who have learned how to manipulate the search engines. Because if a lot of people keep asking the same question, that product bubbles up to the top. So you do need to make sure you look at various sources. Don't let the salesperson control you. I think what's very interesting about that is today we buy cars all off the internet. A lot of the haggling has gone away from car buying. But we've all seen the stereotypical car salesperson, and I don't mean to be offended or offend anyone who was a car salesperson, because there are very honest ones out there. But we also know that there were some who just kept talking, never let you ask a question. They wanted to get you into the car. Pick a product. There is someone who does that with every single product you purchase, especially big purchases. And develop a refusal script to stop unwanted interaction. That's interesting. Most people just say, well, hang up the phone, or a lot of people no longer answer a house phone if they have it. But there's also a generation who are just uncomfortable hanging up, which is why this is in here. Develop a refusal script. Now, I added a little bit to that. When we moved to Texas, I'm assuming the con artist must go and look at people who get new driver's license or something, but we got call after call after call from investment scammers or investment people. And my goal was to get off the list. So I started answering the phone calls, and I would say things like, oh, I'm sorry, we're all invested. And if they kept talking, I would say, I'm sorry, we're broke. And that usually got them off the phone and got us off the list, because that was my goal, to get off the list. But you do need to develop a refusal script. Protect your social security number and personal information. Now, when we do these in a face-to-face environment, I've been doing this for about 5 years. And we say, if there's a prize to someone who can go into their wallet or go into their purse and pull out their social security card. And in 5 years of doing this, I have never done a presentation where someone didn't pull out that Social Security card. And if you think about it, there's absolutely nothing on that card that you don't know. You know your name and you know your Social Security number. And I've heard things, well, I go to the doctor's office. Well, if you're on Medicare, back in the old days, 2 years ago, your Social Security number was on your Medicare card. Okay, but one of the things that AARP was very instrumental was lobbying to get that number off of Medicare cards and give you a unique identifying number. And the reason is it made seniors vulnerable because their Social Security number was being written in places that may or may not be secure. You know, doctors' offices, I don't know what kind of backup security they have when they take your Social Security number. But the reality is that's not necessarily the case anymore. Guess what? There were scammers who called people and said, do you need assistance getting a Social Security card with your personal identification number on it? For record purposes, could you give me your Social Security number? The scammers found a way to cheat people out of that, or get their identity. Monitor your bills and financial accounts. It seems like back in the day when we balanced a checkbook, people knew every penny. I think we've gotten a little comfortable because we can all go online and say, okay, I went to Kroger, yeah, I did this, I did that, I did that. But we do have to be mindful that we need to check, because who knows? Someone can steal your identity, charge things, and you never know. I can think of at least once where I woke up and on my phone, because I have it set up for alerts from one of my credit cards, that someone was trying to use my credit card to put gas at a truck stop at midnight in Georgia. As I told you, I live in Louisville. I was in Louisville. I was not in Georgia at a truck stop filling up a car. And by the way, it must have been a truck because it was $100 worth of gas. And at the time, gas wasn't that expensive. And what happened was the credit card company knew that was not my profile. So they refused the sale. And what happened, I got the alert that said, is this you? Yes or no? I was asleep at midnight, so I never hit yes. They refused the sale. They changed my credit card number, but clearly somebody had my credit card number and they were shopping. But had they gotten away with it, I would have had to look at my phone or look at my bill to find out. You really do need to be vigilant. If you have financial brokers, you could check on that broker. So if someone calls you up and say they are a broker and they've been in this business X number of years, you can go out and check. You can find out if they've had any complaints. Those websites, FINRA.org/broker-check and SEC.gov, will allow you to check on your broker. And you know, even if you trust the person implicitly, isn't it fun to go out there and see their name and it says no complaints? It gives you at least peace of mind. And then watch over your credit reports. This is what we talked about earlier when we said that you're entitled to credit reports. Annualcreditreport.com will allow you to get free credit reports once a year from all 3 of the reporting bureaus. You can call that number or you can go to that website. And reminder, lock down your credit. So people cannot get you pre-approved, or they cannot use your credit card, go to your credit report and start an account in your name. Unfortunately, when you do business with a company and they have a customer service person with all of your information, every business that I'm aware of trains their people to not give out information. They train their people to protect your information at all costs. But then con artists sometimes get them, and you get a kind-hearted soul my mom just passed away. I need to get into that account. Can you please help me? It works sometimes. Most places now have a 2-3-step authentication process. Sometimes you'll get the kind-hearted soul who is so well-intentioned, who's trying to help that person out, and they give up too much information. And while we're on it, let's talk about social media. You know, one of the things that is, the identity is being stolen of children. And the reason is mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. Oh, little Brenda was born on March 15th. Weighed, 6.5 pounds. Oh, I'm so happy. What a wonderful birthday she has. And of course, mom, Brenda Smith, is doing wonderful. Well, guess what? You just given out your baby's maiden name. You got the birth date. And now the scammers can go and set up identity or accounts in that child's name. Be careful what you put on social media because people are watching. I think most people know you don't put on social media, oh, we're leaving tomorrow for vacation for 2 weeks. But they don't necessarily think when they put the pictures of the kids out there and all the data of little Johnny and what school little Johnny is in. It's one of those things where the world we live in has less and less privacy. And then, of course, there's a generation that are much younger than us who have no expectation of privacy. So the things they share could be considered oversharing by some, but it's the world we live in. Just be mindful. Protecting PINs and passwords and changing them frequently. And we talked about this. And again, a lot of websites now will coach you, whether you want it or not. They will coach you into getting a secure password. So you can't use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 every single time, or you shouldn't use it every single time on different sites. You do need to be mindful of those passwords and how often you change them. Protecting your online information. There's a black market for information, and people who do this for a living, buy it, sell it, steal it, whatever, they use it to come after us. And protecting your mail. When I first moved to this area, I thought those little houses for our mailboxes that we have on the curb, I just thought those were the cutest things. I had never seen them. I didn't come from a place that had them. Well, that was in the 90s. And now we're in the 2000s. And those lovely mailboxes, and I've also lived where I had a rural mailbox, which is the same thing. Your mailbox is not on your house, and it's not locked. The scammers drive by and get your mail. So if you pay a bill, if you get financial statements, if you have that mail that says you've been pre-approved, they go by and get all that. And they use it. One of my colleagues who also does this presentation shared that she always put her mail in the mailbox, put the little flag up for the mailman to take the mail. And someone told her not to do it. And the reason was somebody stole the bill with the check in it, went to the bank, and had altered the check enough that the amount was increased. And because of the bank they went to, the teller, it didn't look right. It was just something not right. And so the teller called that individual and said, did you write this check to this person at this amount? And the person was able to say no. But a different kind of teller who wasn't paying attention that day may have just let them take the money. So think about it. They had the account number. They were getting the money immediately, but they could also forge the checks.
Excuse me, Brenda, I'm going to give you a little 5-minute warning.
Okay, thank you.
So that you can have time for some questions.
Okay, and I'm just about to wrap up. Good.
I thought you were close. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and then the last one, of course, is no access sensitive information over public Wi-Fi. Verify the true name of the Wi-Fi. So back to Brenda's coffee shop, you ask me, what is my password or what is my access to the coffee shop? So you know you're accessing the correct Wi-Fi. Sign up for the Do Not Call registry. And I know people say, oh, that doesn't work. It does work eventually. Double check references and verify charity. CharityWatch.org, CharityNavigator.org will tell you if they're legitimate charities. The other thing they do is tell you how much of the money they collect goes to the cause. So there are organizations that will call you and get money, but when you go to Charity Watch, you find out that 80% of what they collect, they keep. They only give 20% to the cause that they're collecting for. And then AARP.org/Fraud Watch Network. This is what AARP has done for the long term. You do not have to be a member of AARP. It is perfectly free to sign up. But when you go out there, you can put in your zip code, and it will tell you the fraud that's in your community. So for example, fraud in Dallas may be different than fraud in Fort Worth. Fraud in Louisville may be different than the fraud in Plano, which may be different from the fraud in Frisco, or it may be the same. But if you sign up on this website, it will give you alerts, and it'll send it to your email. I get them every once in a while that'll say scammers are doing this. That's how I knew about the coronavirus, because I got a fraud alert. And then if you know someone, or if you have been victimized by a scam artist, this is a telephone number that you can call. Again, it's free. It's part of AARP's effort to protect the community against fraudulent activity. So the number on your screen, you can call. And then if you go to that website, you can get ongoing information, ongoing resources. You can, basically, it's a one-stop shop to help educate yourself. Remember I said read. Educate yourself on fraud. And with that, I will conclude. And if there are any questions, I will take them.
Great. There are a couple that we've already got,
Okay.
Brenda. One is, actually, one was a comment that telemarketers are taught not to hang up until they get 3 refusals. So what what you were advocating,
Yes.
obviously not, if they don't listen the first time, you say something else, say it again.
Right, so, yeah.
Very
That's
good.
why for some people, just hang up the phone. I know we can all screen calls now. I can sit and watch my television, and when I see the number flash across the screen, I know it's somebody I don't know. Or most of the larger cell phone companies now have scam alerts on your phone. And then there are apps that you can download. Be careful downloading apps. Always, always, always read your policies and procedures. And the reason is sometimes you download that app, you may be giving them access to your contacts for a different purpose. You really want to read. I read policies and procedures. Don't just click agree, read it. Next question.
All right. In regard to accessing wireless in a public place,
yes.
Someone has asked, what do you think of the services like LastPass? LastPass will create a random password for you.
You know, here's what I do when I'm in a public place, and we've all been there, right? You're at the mall. Well, you used to be at the mall. You see a dress in your size, or you see an outfit in your size, and they don't have it in the store, and you want to go inside. Here's what I do. I turn off my Wi-Fi and use my network. Your network from your wireless company is encrypted. So just switch to your network. I'm not familiar with LastPass, so I can't really comment on that. But if you feel it's secure and you've done your homework, then by all means. But the easiest way, and I did this quite by accident, I was at the airport and I had forgotten to download my boarding passes a couple of years ago. So I thought, okay, I'll download my boarding pass, and I get the warning on my phone that said, this is public Wi-Fi. And I thought, oh my God. So I immediately turned it off. Use my network. It's encrypted. They can't get into that. Next question.
Very good. Any other questions? Please type any questions you have for Brenda into the chat. And also in the chat, I have given you the link to Broker Check from FINRA. So if you have a financial professional that you would like to check on, you can enter their name in this Broker Check. FINRA is an organization that's kind of a watchdog over financial organizations. And so their site will give you information about whether that broker has had complaints against them or other actions. So Broker Check is a good tool. I've also given you another option for checking into nonprofit organizations to see how they operate, and that is GuideStar. So that link is also in the chat. I'm not seeing any other questions. Anyone else have a question for Brenda about fraud and stopping it?
Keep in mind, every 2 seconds, someone's identity is stolen. That's kind of scary. It means we have to be vigilant.
That is scary, no doubt. Well, I don't see any other questions, and I have just a few things that I'm going to share for folks to find out about other resources available from Plano Public Library at no cost. I'm so grateful that Brenda was with us today, and Brenda's still on, and you can still ask a question.
Okay.
But I'm going to give you a quick overview of a couple things you can get at the library. We're very happy to have AARP as a partner, and Brenda's presentation gave you great information about fraud. These are just a few resources that you might be interested in pursuing through Plano Public Library, all free with your library card. You may get a library card for free if you live in Plano, Allen, Frisco, Garland, McKinney, Richardson, the Colony, or Wiley. You can apply online for a library card. We have access to lynda.com, which has a lot of different courses, thousands of courses that you can take and certifications. Some of them relate to cybersecurity and financial management. So these are excellent, an excellent resource for you. We also have access to the GREAT courses, which are also online courses that are excellent, and they cover a broad spectrum of interests. We also have programs that we present through Zoom, like this one today. Some are with partners, some are library staff presenting. And also you can access ebooks, e-magazines, streaming video, all with your library card at no cost. We are providing porch pickup service for those who would like to check out items, books or STEAM kits or other items. You place the items on hold, and then when they are ready, you can come and pick them up at the library. You just call the library, say I'm outside. They'll bring your items, set them outside the front door, and then you can go up and pick them up. We also offer free access to computers and internet when you have a library card, and you can book a 2-hour appointment for that service right now. The library is also open for what we're calling grab and go service. You can book an appointment for 1 hour time frame when you can come into the library and browse the shelves and check out your items, or pick up holds and check out your items. It's just a brief time because we're trying to encourage social distancing and not too much crowds. Also, there is a book a librarian service if you need assistance with accessing one of the library resources, or for instance, need to do something on Excel. You're building a spreadsheet and you don't know how to do something. You can book a half-hour appointment with a librarian, and they can show you online how to do that. We have a few more upcoming classes. Building Wealth is a basic financial overview of assets, liabilities, and how to protect yourself. We have genealogy programs. We have a focus on genealogy, particularly in October, but there's a genealogy class coming up next week. Also, Connecting Seniors is a wonderful program that is for interaction and engagement. It's just light conversation among friends. So we'd love to have you tune in for that. Managing Money on Your Own is a presentation by a financial professional. This is geared toward teens or young adults. So if you have friends, kids, grandkids who are in that teen to young adult age range and might need to know about basic banking and how you build a credit score, what credit scores are made up of, please encourage them to attend that program. And then we have, again, a financial professional coming in to talk about smart financial choices in challenging times. Like here with COVID, if you have been hit by with financial challenges because of the pandemic, these are some things that you can think about and that will help you to make your way through without getting yourself digging a deeper hole. So we are happy to have you with us today. Thanks so much. I'm going to see, are there any other questions?
I saw one or two. It looked like someone asked me about the check writing pens. And check writing pens, I'm not familiar with. I mean, I know what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be waterproof. But I have this basic belief that if a scammer wants to get your money, they're going to figure out a way. So I don't know much about them, but they're supposedly to keep people from being able to wash off the ink and change your check to a different amount.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. And as far as the courses that I just listed, yes, all of those are free. The resources that are online resources of the library are available with a library card. So for Canopy, which is the video streaming, and also for the great courses, for lynda.com, for ebooks and magazines, those you do need a library card, a Plano library card, in order to use those. But the classes like this one that are on Zoom are all free and open to the public. And all of those services are free. If you live in, say, Carrollton or Dallas or another neighborhood that does not have a reciprocal agreement with the city of Plano, it was not on my list of cities that can get a free library card. A year card for full usage at Plano Public Library is $50. So you can pay for a year's access. And there was one other question about, do you have a number to complain these guys? I'm assuming that you mean about fraud. Brenda, do you have information about where people can lodge complaints? Sure. And if that's not what you meant, the person who asked the question, if you are not asking about fraud, those who are committing fraud, if there's some other thing you could clarify with us.
Sure. Well, there are a couple of things. If you're a victim of fraud and you absolutely know that, call the police. It's a crime and they can help you. But most police departments now do have people who are focused on fraud. It's that prevalent. Call the number that we put on the screen before, and I'll just give it to you. It's 877-908-3360. And that number is a one-stop shop for people who have been victimized by fraud, and they can give you guidance. But every law enforcement agency you can complain to. The FBI is involved. The FBI does a report. Some of the statistics that I quoted came from the FBI. So there are any law enforcement agency you can go to. And the reality is a lot of victims don't go. They're embarrassed. There are romance fraud out there. Do you really want to tell someone that you fell in love with a con artist and he took all your retirement money? People are embarrassed. But the reality is if we don't stop them, they will continue to do it.
Sorry, Brenda, are you able to repeat the number one more time? Yeah. And I'll type it in as well. Is it 1-877?
877-908-3360. And that's a number AARP has put out there for people who have been victimized by fraud.
Okay. Very good. I don't see any other questions coming in. Thank you so much for your time. We're glad that you were able to be with us today. Thank you, Brenda, so much for sharing this great information, a very important topic. And for those of you who were able to watch today but have a friend or neighbor who was not able to attend, there will be a recording of this program that will be available on the library's YouTube channel, so you can direct them to the library website and they will be able to watch and get benefit from this information as well. So thank you so much, Brenda and AARP, for sharing the expertise today. And thanks to all of you who attended. Have a wonderful day.
Take care. Bye-bye.